Hello there. This is your Kelowna counselor, Tim Lamont, from Unyielding Health and Wellness. And as many of you know, I do career counseling with some folks. And so today I thought it'd be helpful for anybody watching this video just to see how a Kelowna counselor does career counseling. And so I've had a little case study prepared for us today. It's on my website. The title of it is Career Counseling Kelowna, How a Therapist Can Help with Career Transitions, the case study. And so all of the client information and presenting issues and such are all just made with AI, just general randomized, a random client. But as you'll see though, the character James, it seems very real and relatable, I think, to a lot of the fears, angers, sadness, all these things that can come with contemplating what to do for a career or what to do once you're in a career but realize maybe this isn't quite for me. Social implications of working at a job or a larger company where there's it's not really even about the work at all, but rather the people at the job. Lots of things factor in here though, so let's get into it though. So this is a Kelowna career counseling case study. Here's some client background. So our client is James, a 42-year-old IT professional in Kelowna, BC. James sought career counseling at Unyielding Health and Wellness due to dissatisfaction with his current job, uncertainty about his career path, and anxiety about making a change. He reported feeling unfulfilled, stuck in a repetitive role, and unsure about his skills' transferability. These concerns were affecting his confidence and his work-life balance. So he describes a stable but unengaging IT job where he felt his potential was underutilized. He expressed fears of failure if he pursued a new career, combined with the belief that he was too old to start over. He also voiced existential concerns, questioning whether his work aligned with his values or contributed meaningfully to his life and broader community or society. He had no prior counseling experience, but was eager to explore new possibilities. So, we're going to look at our initial assessment here. So, our goals during the first couple sessions and on an ongoing fashion, but more pronounced in those first initial meetings, is really to build rapport between James and myself. I'm going to assess his career concerns and gather some context there, and then also I always like to begin the sessions or begin the therapy process with the end in mind. So we're going to really look to see what his goals, his desired outcomes are from career counseling in Kelowna, and then establish a plan based on those goals right from the get-go. So let's get to it. We're going to use my three favorite theories, which are rational emotive behavior therapy, or REBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is closely related to REBT, and a lot of people know that one or are familiar with it anyway, and then existential therapy, which is all about finding meaning and purpose and the importance of it. So let's look at how REBT can help our friend or our client here, James, with his career transition. So REBT's strength is really challenging some of these irrational beliefs people have that disturb us. And these irrational beliefs, what they do is they turn a normal, healthy, negative emotion, such as the fears that will naturally come up when contemplating a career change. It's natural to be afraid of that process and have some concern. But where we run into trouble is when these irrational beliefs cause us to have unhealthy negative emotions. So that anxiety, rather than being maybe at a 4 or 5 or 6 out of 10, and it's enough to have us really considering making sure that this is the right choice, but not so much so that then we're stuck in fear and just crippled by anxiety, and we don't actually perform in action. So our ABT is really good at challenging those irrational beliefs, which it seems like James is having right now. And we're going to look to replace these irrational beliefs with more rational alternatives, which should help to reduce his anxiety. It might not, and most likely will not, completely eliminate it, but it will get it to a more manageable level where he can then act on his fear and perform actions, and hopefully ultimately when he performs those actions and strives towards a goal, he can realize, oh, I didn't actually need to be afraid of that, or I did it while being afraid, and now my life is so much better, or now I feel more fulfilled, things like this. So the process. So we're going to use the disputing technique to challenge his belief of I must stay in a secure job. And again, though, these quotes, they're generated with the AI. These what James said, but I think a lot of people can relate to that. The job security is a huge thing. That it's very sticky and it's comfortable. Familiarity. Very like it's quite literally stepping out of your comfort zone when you're approaching some things like this. And so I must stay in a secure job. Maybe there's a mortgage on the line. Maybe he wants to be able to send his kids off to hockey camp and all these extras. So we're gonna this would be something that after exploring his context in therapy, something like this would come up. In the conversation, I must stay in a secure job. Oh, and then myself would say something along the lines of, well, does staying in an unfulfilling job guarantee satisfaction or guarantee happiness? And to which James is most likely going to answer, well, no, because I'm not happy right now. I'm not satisfied right now with this job. And again, it might satisfy him financially, but as we've discussed above, he wants more meaning, and he just feels like these repetitive tasks. That's his context. And so asking questions like these can help James see that, and begin to see that some of his beliefs are rigid and they're inflexible and limiting him actually. So he practiced some rational self-statements such as, I'd prefer job security, but I can take calculated risks to find fulfillment. And so in knowing that, perhaps a homework exercise might be to, I don't know, just spitballing here, but he wants to change his jobs from IT to something else. Just because he comes to therapy and comes to career counseling doesn't mean that he has to quit the day after. He can begin preparing himself for the next step, or breaking down the next couple steps into 10 or 20 smaller steps. What jobs are out there that I would actually think would be meaningful? Why do I think those are meaningful? How about I maybe go experiment volunteering in that industry for a couple weeks or a month or two to see if it's actually true. All these other things, like reaching out to friends and family to get their opinion of something I might like instead. All these things. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be stepwise, and so begin to challenge some of these thoughts. Excuse me. So to manage some of his anxiety about change, because it's going to take some hard work. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to put in the work. I think a lot of people, if I were to say you could go to a physiotherapist once every week or two and do the exercises for 45 minutes and not do them at all till you've seen the person again, most people would say, yeah, that person that does it that way isn't going to improve at all, or very minimally. Whereas the person that then takes those exercises and practices them for 2 or 3 repetitions, or 20 minutes to an hour a day, you name it, that latter person is probably going to be in a lot better position after a couple weeks and months. And so it's going to take some work. And so James' homework was to start practicing some of these self-coping statements when his anxiety comes up, that I would prefer job security, but I can take calculated risks and find fulfillment. And practice saying that, and that phrase like that would be constructed in therapy between the client James and the therapist, and because it's got to be James's own words. He's got to own it. And so then he's practicing those techniques. Perhaps in this example, we found actually he also liked taking moments of mindfulness and going for a 20-30 minute walk in the park and just observing nature around him and its beauty, and that helped him relax and was a good space for him to think. So he's practicing some mindfulness techniques as well, and then some self-compassion exercises. Could be, it might not necessarily be even related to the career itself, but how him knowing that he can make a good decision for himself and the other people in his life. Might be like I trust myself, and looking at, well, how do I know I can trust myself? Well, I've done these things in the past. I know these things about me that I really like. I know these things about me that I really don't like. I know these, or I meant, I really like doing these things in life, and I know it because I've done them. And I don't like doing these things because I've done those as well, and I don't really like them. And so I can trust those beliefs. Which isn't really related necessarily to career, but just his faith in himself to go through this process and to come out the other side, because there's just part of himself that's just sounds like just sick of this job that he has. Sounds quite bored, quite just monotonous day-to-day boredom. And so let's see the outcome from talking to in the aspect of REBT. He reported some reduced anxiety about his career change, and he began to view risk-taking as part of his growth and his path forward, though he still struggled with some self-doubt about his age. So now let's get into how CBT can help with these career transitions. And that's not to say that REBT can't help with self-doubt about his age at all. I've just structured this blog in a way that I can show you who are reading it and listening to this just how REBT, CBT, and existential therapy can interplay with each other throughout various aspects of this person's life. Each theory in and of themselves has a different way to address almost all of the ways people can become disturbed. And so, like, right off the top of my head, REBT would say, well, what would be, at what age would you never be able to make a career decision again, a new career decision again? And how is someone supposed to answer that? There's no way they can say definitively that at 32 I can never make a career decision again. It's just to help expose some of the ridiculous and frankly irrational beliefs that people have, and they get mired in them often without knowing it. It just takes some conversation to get up, and there's normally these demands there, like, well, I'm 42, I should have it figured out. I only plan to work for another 23 years. I should have it all figured out by now, and if I don't, then I'm a failure, because they're looking at all their friends and their friends' spouses. Everybody else seems to know what's going on, but it's placing all the blame on themselves for, in a sense, not keeping up with the Joneses in terms of their career, or just like their mental capacity to push through. Oh, that person's job also, I know they complain all the time about it, but they still do it. I should be able to just stick down and do it for another 23 years too. Well, you can, but it doesn't sound very preferable to do that. That's how REBT would begin to approach that, but I digress. Anyway, I don't want this video to be a huge long thing. I think the last one was like 35 minutes, so. All right, so let's see how CBT is going to help our friend James here. So it's very similar, except there's less of a kind of philosophical meaning by it. It's more so really directed at the behaviors someone's going to do in relation to cognitions. And so we're going to look at some of his cognitive distortions. So these are very similar to irrational beliefs or these thinking traps, the way people think about certain things, and it's easy for the mind to kind of fall into one of these and get stuck there. And then you got emotions that make the sides very sharp or slippery to crawl up. So let's see, we're going to support his career decision making and inspire his confidence that he's making the right decision for himself. So using CBT, our Kelowna counsellor Tim guided James through thought records to challenge distortions like overgeneralization. For example, when James thought, "I'm too old to switch careers," the therapist, myself, helped him reframe it to, "My experience is valuable and I can learn new skills." And so right there you can kind of see it's similar to REBT, very, very similar. But then we're the behavioral therapy, and it's in both of them. But now we introduce a behavioral experiment for James to try. So we're going to test his fear of his lack of ability to change, that he's too old. And so he agreed, and this is, again, something that in therapy, I would say, well, what's one small action you can do that you think would help you in the situation or would rub up against that fear that you would actually do, and we can just play with it a bit. And it's going to be anxiety provoking. Again, it's going to be hard work, but you're here in therapy because you want change. You don't want to keep doing what you've always been doing. And when it comes to career counseling in Kelowna, there's a lot that goes into a career, and it's scary. But you're the one that gets to decide, do you want to stay in that career, or is that those feelings that are driving you to come to career counseling, have those now mounted enough for you to say, hey, I'd rather have the fear of change and put in the effort than to stay where I am. And once you cross that, it's almost like a chemical reaction, that activation energy. Sometimes the counselor can act as one of the enzymes that help that reaction happen a bit quicker. And often what people like to do is they like to perceive that their gain on the other side of all this hard work is they're gaining, I think it's something like 1.5 or 2 times the gain to every ounce of effort or perceived emotional exertion or perceived emotional negativity on the old side, the old version of themselves, and the new side. And so that's like a really just, I don't think a lot of people actually think about it like that. That's just the like quantitative number. But I think what really gets people to go over the edge is there has to be this mounting pressure, and I'm fed up with how things are. I'm sick of feeling this way. It's been 6 months or 2 years that I've hated going into work, and now it's really starting to spill over into my personal life. And now my wife has said, if I don't, I'm not the same person, I'm not happy anymore, and now I'm upsetting her. And so they had to go, and it didn't have to, but it often will take this downward trajectory until you reach a point where then you think, wow, if I could solve the career aspect of it, then wow, my life would that'd be great. That would be so great. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can come to therapy at any point you want. And I encourage people to do it, even if you just come and chit chat and and it doesn't have to get so bad that your wife is saying that you're a different person and use up 2 years of your life. But anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. So where were we? The counselor introduced behavioral experiments to test James's fears. Again, agreed on between both people. James agreed to attend a local networking event to explore new industries, observing whether his age was a barrier. This helped him realize that younger professionals valued his experience. So you can kind of think in this scenario, it's maybe a job fair. We'll go with job fair. And he's just going around, and maybe there's I'm just trying to think what's kind of somewhat adjacent to IT, computer work, working at a telecom company, maybe just technology in general, like a solar company, batteries, like home batteries. Really, there's so much to do, but let's say there's a new, you hear it like a new tech upstart, and has one of those really young tech founder type folk, and they have this great idea, and maybe it's gonna help a bunch of people, but this person's 30 or 25 or something, and it's their first time going out on the limb of business and entrepreneurship, and they're there looking for someone that can really securely handle all the systems and keep all the accounts of this software that they're selling, you name it. Make sure everything's secure, everything's flowing well, and James can come in, and it's like, wow, this kid really appreciates his experience. He just loves the fact that James knows exactly what to do, how to answer all of his questions and solve all of his problems. And where it's a new tech startup, James gets to maybe he wears not just the IT hat, but he's also the social guy, or he gets to be every time it's someone's birthday in the office, he's the guy that organizes things and playing some fun stuff for the team. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but it's not such a baked in work culture. It's a bit more flexible, and maybe he gets to work from home. It's more of like a remote job. But he would never have found that out if he didn't go to the job fair and realize that this fear would have held him back from that, and that's the main point. And so to build confidence, we used a data log so this is just a fancy way of saying a journal, where he tracked daily achievements. So it could be updating his resume. That could be, when we talked about, it doesn't have to be one big step. It could be broken down into 10 or 20. Updating the resume could be one of those steps. And, spend a day or two or a week getting that done, and wow, that's great. Researching new roles was another thing that James was able to do in this journal or this data log. So he identified that he'd there's 3 different jobs in Kelowna that he'd like to try and pursue, either before or during, or after or during his career counseling. And then he starts to tailor his resume based on those. And in the little excerpt or his cover letter, he's able to refine it and have that much stronger of an application. Completing these things, so that's the important thing, like completing these goals and moving and inching towards that larger goal. It's going to help a lot with his negative self-image about that he's too old, that he's unable to change anymore or adopt new skills, that he can't stand having a lack of job security or taking that leap of faith. This will help with all that and kind of help build up that confidence in our friend James here. So, let's see. Now we're on to existential therapy of how this can help James. And let's just, we'll say here, right off the top of my head here, though, how existential therapy would support him in making the right decision for him. In his confidence, it would really be, what it would likely look at is just who he wants to be in the world and what's meaningful for him. And it does sound simple, but it's not easy. And you'll hear me say that a million times if you are a client of mine or watch some of these videos. So how does he know that switching jobs is the right decision? What values of his are at play? What ones aren't being fulfilled right now? Is even going to find a different job the answer, or is it finding a new hobby? Like, let's say he loves the outdoors and he hates that his job is inside all the time. Is it really the answer? And it's asking him and getting his opinion and getting him to debate and prove that his opinion is what he believes and his rationale for it. And again, that's a little bit of REBT, but REBT is kind of like a existential mix of CBT and existential therapy. But how does he know that he values nature? And it sounds kind of like just a rhetorical question almost. Like, who doesn't love nature? I like nature because I like nature. Well, what do you like about the fresh air, the openness, the freedom of it? Maybe you don't really like nature, but you love plants, or you love birds, or free flowing water. And so you can begin to ask, is it really... I don't even know if I'm really talking about existential therapy here. I've gone back to, excuse me, like an REBT mix, but it's something that I would certainly ask, do you even want to change career or find a new hobby that satisfies that itch? Anyway, so I kind of went off on another tangent, but so let's explore how his existential concerns with meaning and unfulfillment align with his values, and then aligning those with his career. So we used existential therapy to explore James's sense of unfulfillment through reflective dialogue. So again, though, that's just really hammering home and getting to the root of why. Prove it. Why? Because. And then eventually, that's what I love about life. You'll get the client like, I can't stand it if, I really, really appreciate having time with my wife when I'm not stressed. And this career is making me stressed outside of work too much. And, all of the other things aside, maybe that ends up being the cornerstone of his values, that he wants a peaceful life outside of work. And that's the big one. Maybe secondary to that or adjacent to that is that he wants to not be bored while he is at work, and he wants to at least be neutral while he's at his work, not bored, which I would consider kind of a negative emotion. And maybe that comes second, or it's right up there with having a good work outside of life. Anyway, so through this reflective dialogue, we identified that mentoring others and working on impactful projects gave him purpose. So, it sounds like maybe the career he was at was maybe he got hired on there. I'm just thinking with Starlink and such, and laying fiber optic cables and IT. I don't really know exactly what he did, but maybe he got on and the company was growing and he was hiring, and he was helping other people come into the industry, and things were great for a number of years. He's 42. Maybe he got in there as a young man. He was in there for 2 decades, and the first 10 were great. But then, the industries and societal shifts began to shift away from what he was doing, like maybe a big cloud computing company AWS or Microsoft got the contract for the people around, and so he was just kind of slowly maintaining the IT services for an ever shrinking pool of clients that had existed for a long time. And so the company was running out of money. They're not hiring other people. So there's less opportunities for mentorship. And so he lost that. Maybe with realizing it, maybe without. Maybe maybe him saying this thing that he really valued mentoring people. Maybe that came up on the third or fourth session where he said, yeah, the first 10 years the company was growing, it was great. And then, flash forward another 10, and it kind of, these things often happen slowly, inch by inch. He realized, wow, the last new person I got to mentor was 3 or 4 years ago. And I just, wow, I really miss that. That's something, these types of things can come up. And it's a truth that he probably knew it, but whether or not he could acknowledge it or see it or how fleeting it was, often it can be almost obvious once a person says it. And I like asking people in these moments, if you said something like, "Oh, I really missed mentoring those kids or those young professionals," and you'd be like, and I would say something like, "Is that the truth?" And I love the look on people's faces, not in a gratuitous way or anything, but people know when it's the truth or not. And if it's not, then the conversation goes deeper. But once you get to the truth, then there you found your value to live by. He likes to help out youth and feel that he's being useful to the new generation. And that's so nice that we found that, and it's always I like helping people find the truth. That's part of the reason why I love my job. And so one of his truths is mentoring others, and then the other one was working on impactful projects, not just maintaining an old, decaying IT department in this. Maybe it was a big telecom company or something. So myself as a Kelowna therapist encouraged James to embrace career freedom and responsibility. And I would not advise him to do that. I would ask him, what if you embraced this freedom and the new responsibilities that you would really love to have? What if you did that? And so, he says, you know what? That would be enough of a positive effect. Maybe that was the little bit that got him over. Like, he knew he'd probably have a good time at a new job, but he didn't want to risk, all these things up in the air. But then he realized in that motivation of, I could make something new and valuable to society, and I could help people who are just starting. Wow, wouldn't that be excellent? And that was enough to push him on top of the other things of not being so bored. The other things that were mentioned in there, not being so bored, and what was it? Anyways, it's let's keep going. So, freedom and responsibility. So he explored how he could choose roles, choose new jobs, reflecting those values, such as joining a community-focused tech initiative. And so again, this could be one of those things where he's starting to branch out, and it could be one of those steps in the 10 or 20 things. He's now volunteering at a little thing. Who knows who he'll meet there? But he had the initiative to go there and look at it. And, excuse me, sorry. It's what I was doing. And then I asked James, after he's been doing this for a bit, to imagine a future where his work felt meaningful to him. And, maybe it helps him refine these things. He knows he wants to mentor people. He knows he wants to do some cool community projects that are worthwhile and productive for the whole community. But maybe that's not really refined enough. He's mentoring people, but again, he hasn't even decided what job he wants to do yet. So visualizing this, in rational emotive behavior therapy, we'd call it rational emotive imagery. In existential therapy and a lot of other things, you just call it visualization and some meaningful reflection. A lot of these theories kind of come at things and they all end at the same place, but a different way of getting there. So after that dialogue, he set a goal to pursue a part-time course in project management to transition to a leadership role. So maybe, it sounds like during those discussions, he pictured himself maybe not just mentoring one or two people, maybe he was mentoring 5 or 6, and then it spun his mind into, well, if I'm kind of leading 5 or 6 people, that's a fairly big, small little business startup thing here. And then that thought, who knows where that thought could go with James. And in James's instance here, he might have dwelled on that for an instant and knew, that's what I want to do. That's exactly what I want to do. He might have dwelled on it for a few days or a week or two and really reflected on, well, what would that look like? Okay, what would we pursue our little team? All these things kind of just come into the mind. There's so much to work with. But, it sounds like he decided on, maybe I'll create my own job and we'll do some cool projects in the community. We'll reach out and I will help young kids coming into the information technology space. I'll help them learn some skills and see where we go. And but he knew as soon as he was thinking this, I don't know how to lead a team. And maybe then he's having thoughts like, I could never lead a team. I'm not a leader. I can't be a leader. Nobody would ever listen to me or respect me. Is that true? Can you prove that you aren't a leader or aren't do you have to be the best leader in the world? Do you have to be a perfect leader in order to help the community with projects or help mentor some young kids? These are things that that might be, and I'm not saying that this James needs to be in therapy for years and years. There's get out there and do it and come back when you need it. And but it sounds like he's figured out though that he knows what to do, and now he knows what to do, and at least what he is lacking right now, which is some leadership skills. And so this whole case study here, this could happen in a single session, or this could happen in 5, 10, 15, 20. It really depends on the person, what stage they're at, how much work they put in between sessions, how just their natural tendencies as a person. There are other responsibilities in life too. Some people might have all the intentions of reflecting on the therapy session for 20 minutes a day in between sessions and reflecting on some of these thoughts and doing some mental exercises. But life gets in the way, and a couple of weeks go by and they forgot to book, and then because really what it is what you're booking for is not only the use and partnership of my mind and yours, but also intentional sitting down and thinking on a difficult subject matter for 50 minutes with intention and with my mind, kind of, because clients will often, it's not that they don't want to be there or are fighting it or anything, but there's a reason why often people, why they haven't done it themselves and haven't reflected on their own. And it's not in their whole life, but just on this aspect of life. Maybe that every time they think about it, just they get to a point where, maybe James here gets to a point where he already knew that he liked mentoring people, but as soon as he even thinks about, well, how would I ever create a project that other people in the community would enjoy? I don't know anything about that. And for months or years, every time he got there, it just got so overwhelming. It just stopped him dead in his tracks, and then he kind of just slunked back down, or just like, I'll stick it out here. And then, a couple weeks go by, great, feelings of boredom mount up again. It gets to that point again, some thought, no. But with a counselor, you have someone like myself who would say, hey, look, I'm here. Let's push past that point together. I notice you get extremely anxious, or extremely angry, extremely sad at the life you're living when you get to this point, and you seem to get stuck, and you're not talking as much as you used to. Your legs shaking. It's kind of like when I step in and hold you to your word and hold you to your goals. Say, well, this, you told me 2 weeks ago that this is what you want to do, and now you're not doing it. What's going on right now? What's going on in your mind? And then we can work with the emotional aspect of it. Maybe it's communication strategies with your boss. Maybe if you just told all this to your boss might say, yeah, well, we have this opportunity internally within the company. You should try that out. And you won't even have to, all this worrying might not even be there. But, all of this, it could boil down to that. It could boil down, there's so many different ways the mind and life can take us. But I always tell people, if your quality of life isn't what you'd like it to be, at least give it a shot. And again, my name is Tim. I offer career counseling here in Kelowna, among other counseling. I counsel for anxiety, anger management, helping people make decisions, all sorts of things. Career counseling, I find, can tie in a lot of them. There's fear, there's anger, there's certainly decision making to be made, values at play. I want people to have meaningful careers. I certainly do. I love going into work. I love my job. I want other people to be able to experience this and not have this bifurcation of them that's at home, and then I got begrudgingly go to this job that I hate. Some people don't mind that if it pays enough that they can then have fulfillment, and every weekend they do a new hobby, and it's so exciting that way, and the job is just for the money to do the hobbies, and that's fine too. But I always, if your quality of life isn't what you'd like it to be, book a 20-minute consult with me. It's always free, and come on in for some career counseling. Thanks for listening to this.